Thank you so much for having me on. Really cool to be on. My name is Dan Atta, Atta. I am a singer songwriter, and I grew up loving a lot of music from the '60s, uh, the Beatles. Very, I know, very original uh, band to love, but the Beatles were a huge inspiration growing up, and guys like the Stones and the Kinks and Bob Dylan and David Bowie. So I feel like I kind of write in that tradition a bit, but also try to do something for uh, for 2021. So yeah, I you know, I write songs and I just kind of I put them out there and yeah, um, that's kind of what I do.
Great, perfect. So with that, the first question that we got was asking about who some of your most prominent influences are.
Oh yeah, well I guess I kind of covered that in the intro, but I can say more about that. Yeah, so in addition to those '60s bands I mentioned, I I also really loved Oasis. Still love Oasis. They were so Noel Gallagher's melodies and songwriting, really big influence. Um, they're a really important band for me when I was in high school. And um, Another really important band for me when I was in high school was the Strokes, and the Arctic Monkeys and guys like that. So that whole era, the kind of grunge revival thing. Like when the Strokes came out, like no one really sounded like that. So that was really exciting, and they were one of the first bands that made me want to pick up a guitar and start trying to write my own songs. So yeah, and then um, I guess more recently, um, let me think. Well, I don't know. I guess that kind of covers it in terms of main influences. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess with that, the next question that we received was asking about how did you start with music? Like what really do you think like pushed off your decision to go into a career path like this?
So basically, I love writing songs. It's kind of what I do to relax and have fun, right? So like I was always sitting around writing songs on my guitar, um, and I had built up like a big kind of catalog of songs that I wasn't doing anything with. And I guess I finally decided, hey, I should go kind of record these, and put out the songs that I'm writing like in my basement. So the five songs that are on Spotify now were like the five songs that I first recorded in the studio. Um, and now I'm planning on recording actually in a few weeks, like the next kind of group of songs that I've written over the course of like the past year, I guess, like during the pandemic. Um, but yeah, that was just, I think the, the inspiration to do this was just, I was spending so much time writing when I wasn't at work or working. And um, I felt like I owed it to myself to try to just actually record it and sing my songs and put it out in the world and see what happens. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So, I guess since you just talked about your songwriting a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about how you have your songwriting process? Because I know for every artist, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, so I guess my process is pretty traditional. Like, I mean, I mentioned the Beatles before, but like when the Beatles went to India in 1968, they just like brought like their Marvin guitars, right? And they just wrote like most of the White Album, just like, you know, out there when they were doing their meditation stuff. And like, so for me, like I like to write on an acoustic guitar. And the writing process is just sitting down and playing chords and seeing what melodies pop into my head, right? Um, and the process is, you know, some days you sit down and you play the same chord sequence and you hear a cool melody, and some days you sit down and play the chord sequence and you don't hear a really cool melody, you know? So it's kind of just like you never know what's going to come your way depending on, you know, when you sit down to just kind of play around the guitar. And that's how I write, you know, so I just write on a guitar. No, so nothing super fancy or anything. And then, you know, once I have something that I like in terms of, you know, chord structure and melody, then I'll spend a fair amount of time like fine tuning the lyrics. And you know, I care a lot about the lyrics. So that's a part of the process that I it's definitely the part of the process I spend the most time on. Um, and but that part of the process for me is largely kind of after the song is written. The song meaning like the chords and the melody.
And so I guess with that, since you talked about playing the guitar, are there other instruments that you use more often, that you play? And if so, can you tell us about when you started playing instruments? Like, was it because of school or was it just in your free time?
Okay, so I first learned how to play the bass, and I'm a better I think I'm a better bassist than guitarist. But I learned I started playing the bass when I was in high school because I wanted to be in a band, and I felt like a lot of guys play guitar, and there were a lot of drummers, and you never really heard about like usually the bassists in bands are like guys who play guitar, but they weren't like the lead guys. And like, oh, play the bass. And I was like, well, what if I make the bass like my primary instrument? Like maybe that'll be a good way to like, you know, get into a band. Um, and so I started learning the bass, and as I was kind of like falling in love with the Beatles and their music, you know, Paul McCartney's bass lines are like super melodic and like really almost kind of, especially like in kind of the later stuff, like starting with Sergeant Pepper onwards, it's almost like he's playing almost like an independent melody. Like the bass is so melodic, it's like functioning as like it's not he's not just like playing like root notes, like it's like super. So like that, I was very influenced by like that style, that kind of like very melodic, like a lot of movement, a lot of notes. And so I kind of fine tuned that, and then I did play bass in a band in high school, um, and but then I started to really want to write my own songs, and I felt like, oh, I should really like focus on like playing guitar so like I can actually write, because it's hard to write on bass. So yeah, I taught myself how to play guitar. But yeah, the main like I the impetus for learning how to play guitar is really just so I can write songs. And I play a little piano, but I prefer writing on my guitar than piano. Um, so yeah.
And so with that, we did have a question asking if you didn't go into music, is there another type of career that really would have interested you?
Oh sure. I mean, look. So my I work at a film production company for my day job, um, and I'm kind of like the in-house story editor. So I read a ton of scripts and help writers um, by giving them notes on how to, you know, improve the script. Um, so yeah, that's what I. So um, I really like reading, writing, and editing. Um, a lot of my lyrics are influenced by what I read. Like I like to read poetry a lot and novels and stuff. So and watch films. That's why I love film as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Because I kind of
Yeah.
actually yeah.
And so, another question that we were receiving was asking about your music. And since you are planning on releasing music soon, do you think, of all of the songs that you're writing, is there one that you would choose to, I guess, be a hit song and have a lot of people listen to?
So in terms of like the new stuff,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, um, you know, okay, here's how I'll answer that. So like with the with the first batch of songs that I recorded, um, they're all me, but they're all a little bit like sonically different. Because I think I was just trying to find the best sound for each song and just kind of show my craftsmanship as a writer. I think this time around, I'd like to try to find a more cohesive sound for the group of songs. So I plan to spend more time in the studio, like really trying to find um, like a unifying sound, um, for lack of a better term. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is I don't know because I have to kind of see how things feel and sound in the studio because some songs that I might hear a certain way once we get in the studio, I might start to hear differently, just depending on how everything's sounding and stuff. And it might go in a different direction. I mean, it'll be the same song, but like it might go in a different direction sonically. So once everything is finished and I'm hearing everything, then I would have a better idea of okay, like which one like feels the most kind of singly. Um,
Hmm.
Generally you tend to think like okay, like something that's like a little more upbeat and fast, with like kind of like a kind of big catchy chorus would tend to like kind of be the one you would gravitate towards, but maybe not. I don't know. I hope that answers it. Just in terms of like how I think about it, it's hard to know at like this point in the process. But it's a good question.
And so for the last question that we got was asking about if you were to describe the kind of music you do to a stranger, which is probably some of the audience, how do you think you describe it to them?
Yeah, it's always tough, because I um, it's tough to describe your own. I do love a lot of 60s stuff, like I mentioned before. But I'm always surprised and interested when people will hear something I'm like, oh, it really sounds like this band. Um, like online, I get a lot of like, oh, you really sound like America, and I mean, they're great. And that song "Sister Golden Hair" has always been a favorite, but like, I don't listen to them that much, so people always surprise me when they like say, "Oh, you sound like this, you sound like that." I don't. I get Death Cab for Cutie a lot too because I guess great band, but not a band that like they're kind of a band that I actually listen to more. Once I was started to get from a lot of people, "Oh, you kind of sound like them." I think the vocalist and I have kind of like similar tones when we sing, so maybe that's why people think that. Same with America, but I don't necessarily hear it myself. So like, it's hard to describe a sound. I mean, I try to. I like stuff that's like I care a lot about melody. So I like I and lyrics, and so it's like it's kind of like it's 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 kind of rooted in my love for 60s music, but I'm trying to not just like I feel like I try to do my own thing and I try to write songs that I always just try to write songs that I would want to listen to that I haven't heard yet. It's kind of like my guiding philosophy, I guess. I'm just always trying to just like, because again, it's just me. Like, I'm just trying to like write something, be like, oh, that would be cool to hear. I haven't heard something like that. So that's kind of, so I guess it's a kind of long winded way of saying it's hard for me to articulate what my stuff sounds like. And I'm always surprised when people will mention bands that I wouldn't necessarily associate with stuff, but all really cool ones. So, I guess to wrap up, it's maybe best for someone else to say how my music sounds because they always tend to have like more interesting answers.
All right. So I guess with that, I did want to ask, this is like a question that so many people say it's hard. It's an easy one, I promise, but it's what is your favorite song right now?
My favorite song right now. Wow. Okay, I'll tell you my favorite song right now. There's a band in the UK called Pastel, and they came out with this song called "Deeper Than Holy," which is really incredible. They're like it's like it's super early '90s, so it's a lot like the Stone Roses. It's got the attitude of like early Oasis. The singer also kind of sounds like Richard Ashcroft from The Verve. So it's got that kind of early '90s British sound, but it's incredible bass line, great vocals, great vibe, great attitude. I heard it. A friend sent it to me, and these guys, I think it's like their second song that they put out, and I was super impressed by it. I've been listening to that a lot. So if you haven't heard that song, "Deeper Than Holy" by Pastel, check it out. It's pretty cool.
All right, and so that's all the questions that we have for today. Do you want to share your social media or anywhere that the listeners can follow you on?
Oh, sure. So if you go on Spotify or any of those other like streaming services, and you search Dan Atta, it's DAN and then ATTA. I've got my first 5 songs that I recorded, and then if you go to my Instagram page, you can just type in Dan Atta on Instagram to find it. I've got a bunch of videos of like me either like playing some newer songs or like doing some covers, plus doing a bunch of just like acoustic versions of the songs that I have recorded that you can find on Spotify. So there's just like a lot more content there if you want to check it out. Um, yeah, um, that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate your reaching out, and this was super fun to do.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I will be playing some of your songs intermittently tonight for the show, but thank you so much again for just taking some time out of your day to answer questions that any listeners would have for you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again. This is really fun to do.
All right, thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.
Steps were high and I started to climb. At the top there was a temple, golden and white, where monks crossed their legs, their bodies upright, and their heads lay beside them thinking. I need that light